He got his start in West Philadelphia, working for the Fresh Prince himself, and later Biggie and P. Diddy. His breakthrough came in 2007 when he met a woman the world would come to know as Lady Gaga. Troy Carter helped take Gaga from unknown to multi-platinum, then broadened his job title from talent manager to tech investor, betting on Spotify and Uber. But his own path to Hollywood was unexpected, coming from a tough neighborhood with a father who did time for murder. Proof, he says, you write your own future. Joining me today on Studio 1.0, founder and CEO of Atom Factory, Troy Carter. Troy, thank you so much for being here. It's great to have you.
Thank you for having me.
So you grew up in West Philadelphia, just like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
West Philadelphia, born and raised.
So we're going to talk a little bit about where you're from and your career in music a little later on. But I want to start with technology. How did you get into tech investing?
You know what? It kind of fell into my lap. About 5 years ago, I didn't even know what the terminology venture capitalist was. Working with Lady Gaga in the very beginning, it was very difficult to get the music played on the radio. So we used a lot of social media tools for marketing. So Facebook was coming out of .edu, Twitter was on the rise, YouTube was just taking off. And we were using these social media platforms to reach fans directly. And a lot of the technology companies basically started approaching us. 75 investments later, you know, now I'm a venture capitalist.
You and Lady Gaga started using Twitter and Facebook and YouTube before anyone else in the music industry really did. In fact, they thought those services were their enemies.
We kind of used it out of desperation more than anything else. We were at a stage where these distribution systems and gatekeepers all of a sudden were a little less powerful because of this technology where you could speak directly to fans. The first time we heard Gaga's music before she even got signed was on MySpace. She was the first mainstream artist to really break out on these platforms.
Right. You're an investor in companies like Uber, Dropbox, Lyft, Slack, Spotify. I mean, these are deals that traditional Silicon Valley venture capitalists would kill to get into. How do you get in?
You know, I think it helps that I'm an entrepreneur. So, you know, I can relate to founders on the ground level.
Give me an example of what your secret weapon is as a tech investor.
The willingness to drive a Mack truck through a cul-de-sac when I believe in something. And also, I think empathy. You know, so I know what keeps founders up at night. The anxiety of competition and what's next, you know, and I can relate to it.
So let's take Uber, for example. How did you get into Uber? Tell me the story.
You know what? I met an entrepreneur by the name of Shervin Pishavar. And he said, you know what? I'm thinking about going into venture capital. And the first deal Shervin called me about was Uber. And at that time, they were only in San Francisco. And, you know, the first conversation I had with Travis was about, you know, I'm thinking the capital expenses around this business of buying, you know, hundreds of thousands of black cars, this could never be successful.
Right.
And, you know, and automatically, you know, Travis said, we're a logistics platform. You know, we're not buying cars. And, you know, he explained it. And my worry was about, how do you scale this company? So
Travis was convincing you. You weren't convincing Travis to let you in.
Yeah, he was, you know, he basically sold me on the vision. At that stage, you're interviewing each other, you know, and we had a pretty significant network. You know, we helped pull, you know, Jay-Z and the Rock Nation team into Uber. So it was about us being able to activate our network as well.
You're also an investor in Lyft.
Yes.
So Uber and Lyft are like sworn enemies. How does that work?
You know what? We actually invested in a company called Zimride. What John and the Zimride team were doing at Zimride were basically providing carpooling from dormitories at school to campuses. And 6 months later, we invested in Uber. That was this black car service. So they were completely non-competitive. And then Uber launched UberX, and then they wanted to kill each other.
So what's that like, having bets on two
I think
opponents?
I think some people have the opinion that it's going to be winner takes all. you know, as we look at this complicated transportation ecosystem, I feel like it's going to be enough room for both. It's going to be a winner take most, but I don't think it's going to be a winner take all.
What is your philosophy at Atom Factory? What kind of companies and technologies are you most interested in?
We're kind of focused on huge shifts in consumer behavior and large demographic shifts. When you look at Spotify and songs that we invested in and kind of looking at the shift from downloads to streams.
What do you see as the main differences between Silicon Valley and LA?
The difference is, up north, you have a very mature system here, you know, and you're on, you know, 4th and 5th generation tech companies. And LA, the lineage is more around media and more around storytelling and narrative. And so the tech ecosystem is still very, very young. But when you look at companies like Beats by Dre, Maker, you know, so you're starting as Snapchat, you're starting to see these multi-billion-dollar companies pop up.
Snapchat, for example, you mentioned $19 billion?
Yeah.
Are they worth that?
I think so. I think they'll be worth more, actually. You know, when you see the amount of videos viewed per day and the type of engagement around the product.
What do you think about the fears that we're in a bubble, that valuations are too high?
I'm seeing some valuations that are way too high because the company just isn't worth what that valuation is at that particular time. When you have A rounds that look like B rounds and B rounds that look like C or D rounds, and then the late stage rounds look, you know, bigger than what an IPO would be, you know, I think we have to really be smart in our approach to, you know, how we're deploying capital. As a founder, I just would be very careful with burn rates right now, and making sure I have a clear path to revenue. So just in case the winter comes quickly, you know, you're prepared as a company to survive, and you're not just surviving off of fundraising.
Do you think winter is coming?
Winter always comes. It's just a matter of when. I definitely feel like a correction is coming. And, you know, we see a series of mini corrections, by the way. I don't think the bottom's going to fall out. But I do think we're going to see a series of corrections, and hopefully